I want an independent inquiry about my case.
Tonight, an Abenaki man is refused car insurance for living in Odanak First Nation.
His opinion of Indigenous people in Nova Scotia is a cause for concern because he is out there teaching.
An investigation over a Halifax University professor's Indigenize This article.
Been getting a lot more clients, and I'm getting a lot more from around the world.
And a First Nations association in the Yukon is helping market artists in the territory. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. It's the last day before Parliament takes a week off, and NDP MP Charlie Angus used it to take a run at Indigenous Services Minister in question period. He once again asked Minister Mark Miller when the Neskantaga water crisis will be ending.
The children of Neskantaga are now in their third week of a forced evacuation, so let's run through this minister's lame Rolodex of excuses for not helping. First, he said Liberals have spent record funding on Neskantaga. Seriously. Then he said, well, at least Liberals have done more for Neskantaga than Stephen Harper. Well, here's the thing. Neskantaga didn't have any clean water under Stephen Harper. Now they have no water under the Liberals. So when he talks about making progress, he means progress going from having no water back to boiled water. Why has this minister completely failed the people of Neskantaga and their children?
The Honourable Minister or Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to acknowledge the unacceptable situation in Neskantaga. I would like to update the House on the current discussions we are having with the Chief. The plan forward involves a staged path to opening the new plant, which we've invested $16.5 million in. And we won't rest until we can repatriate members of Neskantaga to their community in a safe, COVID-free way, and that is what we are proceeding with in partnership with the Chief. Thank you.
Quebec's Indigenous Affairs Minister says the government is taking a first concrete step to make its healthcare systems more culturally relevant for First Nations and Inuit by funding the creation of new liaison positions in the province's hospitals. On Friday, Minister Ian Lafreniere announced that an investment of $15 million over 5 years. This is going to fund training for managers and the creation of a liaison or navigator positions. Lafreniere says that the plan was developed collaboratively with the Atikamekw Nation, and there are more actions to come. APTN asked if one of them is to fund Indigenous-run healthcare centres sometime in the near future.
One of the importance for us was just to start a movement. And today we did that announcement. We're just saying that cultural safety is important. We need to do training, and you know where the cultural safety is coming from. It's from New Zealand, and it's important. It's the kind of project that we think it's important to implement right now. Whether or not what's going to happen in the next weeks or months, it's still considered. We're hoping to that. It's not over.
Despite making history as the first Indigenous person elected to Quebec's provincial government, Alexis Wawanalath was refused car insurance because he lived on reserve in Odanak. 2 years after taking the case to Human Rights Tribunal, he says their investigation is running out of gas. Lindsay Richardson explains.
It's a good day for a drive. And if anything happens on the road, Alexis Wawanalath is insured. But for this Abenaki man, an aspiring lawyer, just getting insurance was a bumpy ride.
I can imagine the people who don't have a law degree, how it could be difficult to face all these sad and frustrating processing.
He inquired at Industrial Alliance, not knowing the company has a clause prohibiting people living on reserve from obtaining car insurance. We asked Industrial Alliance to clarify why. In an email, they explained their policies are simply not available in some regions of Quebec, be they Indigenous communities or not. So in 2018, Wawanalath took his case to Quebec's Human Rights Tribunal and encountered more roadblocks.
All the process with the Commission was very sad, at least, very frustrating for me.
Here's the short version. The tribunal offered mediation, but it failed. Another investigator is assigned to the case. Months pass with much back and forth and paperwork. He then receives notification his file is closed. After pushing, it's reopened. A new investigator is assigned. Not long afterwards, Wawanalath identifies what he feels is a conflict of interest.
I did a little Google search, and he have a sideline, a company who offers some services to insurance companies.
So he's escalating his complaint. Backed by the Centre for Research Action on Race Relations, a Montreal-based civil rights group known as CRAR. Executive Director Fo Niemi says the Commission has no choice but to assign the case to an external investigator who is, quote, independent and competent in matters of racism towards First Nations. Wawanalath agrees.
I want an independent inquiry about my case, an independent inquiry about their employees who have conflicts of interest, and I want to know what they're doing about their own systemic racism. So for other people, I want these organizations, the Commission and the company assurance, understand what they done and maybe change.
The Human Rights Commission turned down APTN's request for comment, saying they can't touch on open cases. They did, however, confirm the file is still active. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
We want to hear what you think about that or any other story that we've brought you or ones that we should be telling. We'd love to hear from you. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, where you could share your comments. Well, Nunavut is no longer the only region of Canada without cases of COVID-19. The government of Nunavut announced the first confirmed positive test today. This positive comes from the small community of Sanakilawak. The community of nearly 900 people is in Nunavut's southernmost point, located near the Belcher Islands in southern Hudson's Bay. Schools are closed and non-essential travel has been shut down to the fly-in community. Nunavut's health department will not confirm the patient's age and identity or gender or their travel history, and the Premier is urging residents not to fill in those blanks themselves.
This is not a time for blame or shame. Please do not spread rumors or misinformation. This serves no purpose and helps absolutely no one.
Time for us to take a quick break, but when we come back, a professor who believes indigenizing education is too accommodating to First Nations.
So there's shame as an alumni that they're not doing what they can to...
Welcome back. A university professor recently wrote an article criticizing diversity and accommodations given to Indigenous students, specifically using one Mi'kmaq student as an example. Now the family of that Mi'kmaq student is asking for restorative justice from the university. Angel Moore reports.
Paula Marshall, an alumni of St. Mary's University, was appalled when she read the article Indigenize This, written by a philosophy professor, John McKinnon.
His opinion of Indigenous people in Nova Scotia is a cause for concern because he is out there teaching and promoting his beliefs to other students that are attending his classes. Whether it is a form of blatant or subtle racism.
The article criticizes diversity hiring, raising the Mi'kmaq flag, acknowledging Mi'kmaq unceded territory, as well as accommodating Indigenous students with in-class tutors whose first language is Mi'kmaq. The article refers to a student McKinnon refers to as Q, who Marshall says is her granddaughter, Kendra Gould. Gould did not want to come forward well in school.
I waited until I graduated because I didn't want other professors to label me, but I also didn't want them to think of me as a dumb student.
McKinnon did not want to appear on camera and said in an email to APTN that he was mortified when he found out the student knew about the article, but he still opposes universities indigenizing and accommodations given to Indigenous students if they cannot function in written English. Marshall, who works in reformative justice, says the university has not responded effectively.
This university, though they promote diversity and talk about indigenizing, did not have actions to follow that up. So there's shame as an alumni that they're not doing what they can to understand what's happened and the impacts of colonialism in Nova Scotia.
In an email statement to APTN, St. Mary's University said the matter is under investigation and they cannot comment. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, Halifax.
The manslaughter trial of Braden Bushby has wrapped up in Thunder Bay. Bushby is on trial for the death of Anishinaabe woman Barbara Kentner, who died in 2017. On Thursday, closing arguments were heard. For more, we're joined by Karen Edwards, the Local Journalism Initiative court reporter for tbaynewswatch.com. Karen, thanks for joining us. Can you walk us through the Crown's closing arguments?
Yeah, so we heard closing arguments on Thursday from both the Crown and the defense in the Braden Bushby manslaughter trial. We know that Braden Bushby has admitted to throwing the trailer hitch at Barbara Kentner, which struck her in the stomach and ruptured her bowel more than 3 years ago here in Thunder Bay in an unprovoked assault. So now the judge will have to decide if that incident ultimately led to her death about 5 months later. And so over the last 4 days, we heard quite a bit of evidence from Barbara Kentner through a video testimony recorded shortly before she passed away, her sister, the two individuals who were in the car with Braden Bushby when he threw the metal trailer hitch at Barbara Kentner, and also a forensic pathologist who conducted Ms. Kentner's autopsy and numerous medical reports of Barbara Kentner. And right from the start, the Crown has made it very clear that Barbara Kentner had significant health issues prior to being struck by the trailer. The Crown is saying if it wasn't for the injury she suffered as a result of being hit by that trailer hitch, that she wouldn't have died when she did. The Crown attorney in this case also pointed out, regardless of her underlying health conditions, there is a clear link between her injury from the trailer hitch and to her death 5 months later. The Crown does not have to prove Braden Bushby's act was the only cause of Kentner's death, just that it was a significant factor. And the Crown argued that Dr. Rose's testimony proved that argument beyond a reasonable doubt. What was in that postmortem? What was the autopsy result in terms of a cause of death? We learned from Barbara Kentner's autopsy report that she died from complications as a result from that ruptured bowel from the blunt force trauma, and end-stage liver disease was a contributing factor but was not the direct cause of her death. That's important. So what was the defense's argument that he should not be found guilty for manslaughter? What was that argument? Right. So Bushby's defense team is contesting what the Crown is saying, obviously. They're saying that there's no legal link between the assault of Kentner and her death months later. Well, and then a sacred fire was set for Barbara Kentner ahead of the 4-day trial. A sunrise ceremony closed that trial. You know, what's the mood given that they're not going to have a verdict until December 14th? That's a long time of waiting. Right. It's tough to say. You know, there was demonstration in support of Barbara Kentner while the trial took place, demanding justice for Barbara Kentner and Indigenous women in general. You know, and the Kentner family was present at the trial every single day. There's no doubt it's been a very emotional week for them just hearing the trial. And having these graphic medical records of Barbara Kentner on display in open court, it's certainly, I can only imagine, it hasn't been easy for them. And before the trial even began, the sisters said that they just want the legal proceedings just to be done and over with. Yeah. Okay, well, Karen, thank you for taking the time to share this with us, and I guess we'll see what happens on December 14th. Thank you. Time for another break, but coming up, a lifeline is being thrown to help Yukon artists sell their wares.
It's the loss of the gatherings, it's the loss of the craft markets and sales, and we see it again this Christmas.
Welcome back. It's now time for our photo of the day. This amazing photo comes to us from the Garden River First Nation in Ontario. Colleen Nolan found this spot as a great place to find some peace during our COVID situation. You guys got to start sending in more photos. Send it to share@aptn.ca. You be sure to let us know where you took the photo and who's in the photo. Maybe your photo will be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Off to the east coast, we got 15 and a mix of sun and cloud in Fredericton, 14 and sunny in Charlottetown. Kuujjuaq, mix of sun and cloud, -6, Nain, 0 and snow, same with Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Gaspé, 3 degrees and showers, 20 and sunshine for Montreal. North Bay, 15 and sunny mostly for Sault Ste. Marie as well. Thunder Bay, 9 with a mix of sun and clouds, and -3 for Big Trout Lake. Norway House and God's Lake, mix of sun and cloud, -4. 6 is for Gimli and Winnipeg, mostly sunny there. 3 and a mix of sun and cloud for Brandon. 3 and rain for Swift Current, 0 and some flurries for Yorkton. -5 and snow for Meadow Lake, -7 and sunny for Buffalo Narrows, -11 and snow for Stony Rapids. Snow and -6 for Grand Prairie and Peace River, sunshine and -10 for Fort Chip. -1 and snow for Edmonton, 3 and some flurries maybe for Lethbridge. Kamloops, snow and 3 degrees, Quesnel, snow and 0. -9 and sunshine for Dease Lake, -2 and snow for Prince George. Old Crow, -1 and snow, -22 and snow for Dawson City. -12 for Fort Liard and Trout Lake, sunshine there. -4 and snow for Colville Lake, -2 and sun for Fort McPherson. -14 and sunny for Baker Lake, -17 and snow for Arviat. Kenate, -2 and snow, Igloolik, -18 and snow, Taliouk, -16 and snow. It's been a tough year for Indigenous artists, with COVID-19 cancelling events and festivals where artists and crafters sell their work. Many have had to deal with the loss of sales in a market that's already known for being unstable and low paying. But thanks to a First Nations association in the Yukon, things are starting to look up for struggling artists in that territory. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
Gwich'in artist Sharon Vitraqua is a successful master beater and crafter. She expected to sell her items at several festivals and markets this year, but when COVID hit the Yukon in March, most events were cancelled and her job stability went out the window.
It's been really rough. For one thing, not having enough unemployment insured hours.
I would say upwards of 30.
Courtney Holmes is the Yukon First Nations Culture and Tourism Association's arts program coordinator. She says the pandemic has had a significant impact on artists in the territory.
It's the loss of the gatherings, it's the loss of the craft markets and sales, and we see it again this Christmas as well with a real restriction on what's being offered.
With the average Indigenous artist making just over $16,000 a year, the pandemic has had a devastating effect. According to a national survey launched earlier this year, the average artist or craftsperson lost or was at risk of losing $32,000 worth in opportunities. And the expected total revenue loss for the arts industry in 2020 is $20.7 million. As a result, the association launched an online store late this summer to help artists who have lost opportunities due to the virus. The store works by advertising artists' products through their online platform and social media channels, connecting them with customers in the Yukon and beyond, free of charge.
These are some beautiful mucklucks made by...
She says so far the store has been fairly successful and has made more than $10,000 in commissions for 30 artists since it launched.
Artists will bring in their work, and then we offer to photograph it for them, put it on the online store.
The association helps artists with marketing and takes high-quality photos of artist items, a major help in today's competitive marketplace. For artists like Vitraqua with no marketing experience, the store has helped enhance the look of her products.
The work that they've done is just absolutely amazing. You know, I'm taking pictures of your artwork. You know, it's so beautiful.
Vitraqua is now one of the store's top sellers and has sold upwards of 30 items.
Thank God I am busy with orders, and like pair of slippers, that takes a lot of time. It'll take about 50 to 66 hours.
The association will continue to monitor the store to see if they'll keep it running past the pandemic. And while it isn't meant to be a main avenue for artists to generate revenue, it is a resource that people like Vitraqua are thankful for during a time when they need all the help they can get.
Been getting a lot more clients, and I'm getting a lot more from around the world, which is just absolutely fabulous for me, is getting my work out there, and so that they can support the artists of the North.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Love to hear that. 2020 has shone a spotlight on racism around the world. In tonight's episode of APTN Investigates, it's Racism Lives Here Too. Tina Roche explores a long history of racism for Mi'kmaq and Black people in Nova Scotia, and she joins us now. Trina, in 2020, we have witnessed the death of George Floyd, 2 Indigenous people killed by police in New Brunswick, the Black Lives Matter rally. How did all of this impact your documentary?
You know, I started this this documentary thinking it was going to be, you know, a look back, sort of an historical look back. But you can see, like, by just the events unfolding in 2020, that when we talk about racism for Black and Mi'kmaq people, it's a very current discussion. I mean, on top of, you know, George Floyd, and then we had Chantel Moore and Rodney Levi, 2 Indigenous people who were killed by police in New Brunswick, within a month of George Floyd's death. You know, so it hit very close to home. We saw the fisheries conflict happen. The backlash against the Mi'kmaq fishery here in Nova Scotia happened through the fall. So it's a very current discussion. And so all of that, you know, trying to weave in some of the current stuff, along with the history that's not really well documented or well told or remembered often, that Canada is a place that has a deep history of slavery. And so it was a lot to pack into 43 minutes, that's for sure.
Well, you and I, this isn't our first rodeo. We've been doing this for a long time, this journalism thing. So what was one of the most surprising things that you learned in doing this documentary?
You know, I think it was the number of people, because I've always heard the stories about the connections and the history, but the number of people today who identify as both Black or African Nova Scotian and Mi'kmaq, like the number of people who have deep ties in both communities, and they're not always voices that we hear from, and they experience racism today in 2020 in 2 very different ways sometimes. I mean, there's a very similar fight for social justice in both communities. But a very different experience. And so I just think there's just like a whole world of voices there and stories to be told. And, you know, just here in Nova Scotia, I mean, I'm talking about the Mi'kmaq and Black experience here, but as you go across Turtle Island, like the connection between Black and Indigenous communities is really long and it's really deep. And I think there's just a wealth of stories there that we just haven't been telling.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for this. Very excited about this tonight. Thanks for taking the time out to give us a little chat.
All right. Thanks, Melissa.
You can watch Racism Lives Here Too, Part 1, right here, right now, because we are all out of time for the news. Don't change that dial. You want to see Racism Lives Here Too by Tina Roche. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you back here next week. Until then, take your medicines and stay healthy.